Hey everyone. So, the little one's sleeping. Yes, I busted back out my wine pants after having a toddler homesick for 2 days. Thought they were deserved. Anyway, so I'm hopefully going to try to answer the questions I get about muscle tone. I've talked about the fact that muscle tone doesn't change. You can get stronger. So for low tone, stronger looks like the ability to like turn on your muscles, generate force, keep your muscles on. So like postural muscles. Not only do I have to like turn them on, I have to be able to hold myself up and I have to keep them on for a long time. So that's why a lot of times you'll see kids with low tones slumping or leaning into things because it's hard for them to stay still or static and keep their muscles on. And then for higher tone, it's easier for them to turn their muscles on, but they tend to turn everything on. So these are the little ones that look like they want to stand all the time. It's harder for them to sit. It's harder for them to get to hands and knees. They kind of shoot out into like full extension. And that's because they're weak also, but their compensation, instead of slouching and leaning into things, their compensation is to turn everything on. So they don't know how to say, like if hands and knees, they need to be able to hold their head up and keep their back extended, but they need to be able to bend their hips and knees. And so for kids with higher tone, it's easier just to turn all the extensors on. So the goal there is to work on strengthening, but strengthening with the goal of just turning on the correct muscles at the correct time so that you don't get all these extra compensations. Now, as kids grow, so early years, it just feels like you're constantly playing catch up. And just as a caveat, there is a big range of tone. So even there's a range for typical tone. So there can be people in the lower end of typical and the higher end of typical. And then in the atypical tone, there's ranges as well. So some kids may be more low tone than others, and some kids may be more high tone than others. I'm giving a general overview. So when babies are born, it feels like you're constantly playing catch up or trying to figure this out. And early on, it can sometimes feel harder. I hate to say this, but like it can be more apparent sometimes kids with low tone, because the kids with high tone, like I said, like to like look like they're standing. So sometimes they are able to mask their weakness a little bit easier. But because babies grow so much in the first year, in the first 2 years, definitely the first year, every time they grow, their muscles change length. And so the way our muscles work is they have what we call a length tension relationship. And so that means that they have this ideal position that they can, when you want to turn them on, they generate force. So if they're overstretched, it's harder to get to that ideal position. And if they're really tight, it's hard to get to that ideal position. So now you think about it. All of a sudden they had a growth spurt. So now it overstretches those muscles. So for low tone, they have to then work to get the strength back. For high tone, they also have to work to get the strength back. But because they're already a little bit more taut, they stretch them. And so some of that tightness or overturning on can come back. So for instance, let's say your baby was able to do hands and knees. Low tone, high tone, they're doing hands and knees. You've been working really hard to get this, like they now can like hold themselves stable. They're not shooting into extension. They're not collapsing. And then they grow. They have a big growth spurt. And so all of a sudden you're putting them down, and like if they're lower tone, they're just like collapsing. They can't hold it. So you have to give them back a little bit of the support that they need so that they can get those muscles firing the right way again, so that they can get back to what they did. The good news is for that, as long as you've been keeping up with their strengthening, the strength comes back faster than if they were struggling already to begin with. That hopefully that made sense. The words didn't come out quite right. And then with higher tone, they hit that growth spurt. You might all of a sudden see them shooting back out. Like you thought you had worked through this, you built up that sweat from helping hold them back, and now like they can't even get into hands and knees again. They just want to extend. So again, you have to go back, take a step back, give them that little bit of support. They can get the gains back faster when they're regaining it than if they're first trying to gain it. That was kind of what I was trying to say earlier with the low tone example. Now, so that's growth spurts. That happens all the way through life. It's just that the growth spurts slow down as they get older. And then skill demands is something else I talk about. And so again, think about a baby. They come out not knowing how to do anything, and by the end of the first year, they're supposed to be practically walking. So I just gave myself a little pat on the back with my post earlier. Use the example of if you started a brand new job and every other week they changed your job description and job duties. So like you start and you think that you're going to be typing ABCs into a spreadsheet, and then in 2 weeks they're like, oh no, you're going to program computers. And then 2 weeks after that they're like, nope, just kidding, you're going to build skyscrapers. So you're not even able to get a grasp on what the first skill was, because the demands are changing constantly. And so you never get to have stability. And so that's kind of what's happening, is there's constantly a learning curve happening. But then as things start to level out, so they hit one, generally once they start walking, you see skills start to like slow down a little bit. And so they can create some of that stability so they can be, so then that's not constantly taxing. They're not constantly feeling like they're on a learning curve. So yes, in the beginning, it feels like this is something that they are going to struggle with forever. And I use struggle in air quotes. But the reality is, as the growth slows down, as the skill demands slow down, they start to be able to hold on to the strength and the skills and the efficiency that they have acquired. And it's not constantly playing catch up. Also, kids start to self-select activities that they really enjoy or they really like, or they like hone in on specific things as opposed to like kind of a wide variety of skill attainment. And so you won't see what you have felt like were this gap between them and their peers. You won't see that as much as they get older. The gap narrows a lot more. Now, for kids that are on the more outer skirts of the range, you might still see some challenges. For kids with high tone, if they aren't keeping up with it, you're going to potentially see more tightnesses, challenges with positioning, things like that. Again, this all depends on how severe the high tone is or the low tone is. Kids with low tone, there's potential for scoliosis to develop and things like that, because if they're having a hard time keeping a typical posture and they're slouching into things, our bodies will get tight. Just like I get tight because I sit at my desk a lot more these days, so I need to be better about doing yoga. I feel like I just threw a lot of information in right now, and please let me know what questions you have. I'm sure I will end up doing more explanations, but thank you guys for hanging out with me, and keep the questions coming and I will keep answering them. Thanks.